Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Cole Brennan had built his life on three pillars: honor, loyalty, and precision. 22 years in special operations had carved these virtues into his very bones, each mission overseas reinforcing what mattered most. At 41, his weathered face bore the map of conflicts most civilians would never comprehend, but his steel-gray eyes still held the intensity that had made him legendary among his peers. The modest two-story house in Cedar Falls, Oregon, represented everything Cole fought to protect. He'd purchased it 8 years ago when he married Amber, a vibrant kindergarten teacher with auburn hair and a laugh that could melt his tactical composure. Their twin daughters, Hannah and Grace, now 15, were the center of his universe when he wasn't deployed. Cole had sacrificed higher-paying contractor positions to stay in the military, believing stability and honor meant more than money. What Amber never fully understood was the weight Cole carried. His specialized unit, Task Force Blackwater, handled operations so classified that even their families remained unaware of their true nature. Cole's basement workshop, sealed behind a reinforced door with military-grade locks, contained equipment that officially didn't exist. Night vision systems worth more than most people's cars, communication devices that could patch directly into Pentagon channels, and weapons prototypes that wouldn't see public acknowledgement for decades. Amber had always been curious about the locked room, but Cole's explanation was simple. Military protocol, sweetheart. Some things can't come home, but some things can't stay on base either. She'd accepted this, trusting her husband's judgment. Their marriage had weathered multiple deployments, but the last 18 months in Eastern Europe had strained them differently. Video calls became shorter, letters less frequent. Cole attributed this to operational security requirements, never suspecting that Amber's distance stemmed from a different source entirely. Russell Hawkins had been their neighbor for 3 years, a divorced contractor whose charm masked a calculating nature. At 38, he possessed the kind of easy confidence that attracted attention at neighborhood barbecues. While Cole served overseas, Russell had slowly inserted himself into Amber's life, offering help with household repairs, driving the twins to activities when Amber worked late, and providing the emotional availability that Cole's demanding career couldn't match. Cole's last communication home had been 6 weeks ago, a brief encrypted message stating he'd be unreachable for an extended period. What he hadn't mentioned was that his unit had been tasked with tracking down stolen military technology being sold on international black markets. The irony of this mission would soon become devastatingly apparent. As Cole prepared for his return, scheduled for the following week, he carried with him a small jewelry box containing a diamond anniversary necklace. 8 years of marriage deserved celebration, and he'd already planned a surprise trip to the coast, just the two of them, to reconnect after the longest deployment of his career. He had no way of knowing that Amber had already made her own plans for their future, plans that didn't include him. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. The garage sale had been Russell's idea, pitched to Amber as a practical solution to their money problems. Cole's been gone over a year, he'd whispered during one of their afternoon encounters. Some of that military stuff has got to be worth something. He'll never even know it's gone. Amber had resisted initially, but Russell's persuasion wore down her defenses. They needed money for their planned escape to California, where Russell claimed to have a lucrative construction contract waiting. The basement workshop had remained locked, but Amber had discovered Cole's spare key months ago, hidden in their bedroom safe along with important documents. On a humid Saturday morning, Amber descended into Cole's sanctuary. The room resembled a miniature armory, with equipment arranged in precise military order. Most items meant nothing to her, but she selected what seemed valuable: a compact device covered in switches and antennas, several pairs of sophisticated-looking goggles, and a sleek black case containing what appeared to be communication equipment. The garage sale attracted typical bargain hunters until Thomas Chun, a retired electronics engineer, spotted the military gear. His trained eye immediately recognized classified technology that shouldn't exist in civilian hands. The compact device alone appeared to be a tactical satellite communicator worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. "Where did you get this equipment?" Thomas asked carefully. "Just old army stuff my husband left behind," Amber replied casually, accepting his $50 offer for items worth more than her house. Thomas waited until he reached his car before calling the FBI tip line. Within 30 minutes, Agent Patricia Vega was racing towards Cedar Falls with a full tactical team. Agent Vega, a former military intelligence officer herself, recognized the equipment descriptions immediately. The response was swift and overwhelming. For city blocks were cordoned off as if facing a terrorist threat. Neighbors evacuated, media cordoned behind police barriers, and federal agents in hazmat suits approached the Brennan residence. "Ma'am, you've made a grave mistake," Agent Vega informed Amber after examining the serial numbers. "This equipment is classified at the highest levels. Its unauthorized possession is a federal crime." Amber's protests of ignorance fell on deaf ears. "It's just old Army stuff," she screamed as agents swarmed her home. But Agent Vega's radio call to headquarters told a different story. "We have a code red situation. Stolen classified technology in civilian hands." The investigation that followed was methodical and devastating. Agents discovered that the equipment had been reported stolen from a secure facility in Germany, the same facility where Cole's unit had been stationed. Initial evidence suggested an inside job, with Cole Brennan immediately becoming the primary suspect. Russell Hawkins, watching the chaos from his backyard, felt the first cold fingers of fear creeping up his spine. This wasn't supposed to happen. Amber was supposed to be long gone before anyone noticed missing equipment. Now federal agents were photographing his truck, running license plates, and asking neighbors questions about their relationship with the Brennan family. As Amber was led away in handcuffs, charged with possession of stolen government property and suspected espionage, she finally understood the magnitude of her betrayal. These weren't just military souvenirs, they were weapons of war in the wrong hands. Agent Vega made the call that would change everything. "We need to locate Sergeant Major Cole Brennan immediately. He's either the victim of the largest equipment theft in recent history, or he's at the center of an international conspiracy." What neither Amber nor Russell could have imagined was that Cole's unit had been tracking the stolen equipment for months, and the investigation was about to lead directly back to the quiet neighborhood in Cedar Falls and to Cole himself. Chapter 3: The Return. Cole Brennan received the emergency recall while his unit was executing a raid on a technology smuggling operation in Prague. The secure satellite phone buzzed with Pentagon priority codes he'd only seen twice in his career. 20 minutes later, he was on a military transport to Andrews Air Force Base, his mission parameters classified at levels that made seasoned officers nervous. The briefing room at Quantico held 3 men who would reshape Cole's understanding of everything he'd built his life around. Agent Vega sat across from him, flanked by General Morrison, Cole's commanding officer, and Deputy Director Walsh from the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. "Sergeant Major Brennan," Director Walsh began, "your wife sold classified equipment from your personal storage to a civilian. The equipment in question includes prototype communication systems that could compromise ongoing operations across 3 continents." Cole's trained composure cracked for the first time in 2 decades. "That's impossible. My wife doesn't have access to classified materials." Agent Vega slid photographs across the table. Images of Amber handing the equipment to Thomas Chun, Russell Hawkins loading boxes into his truck, and most devastating of all, surveillance footage of Amber and Russell in intimate embraces spanning the last 8 months. The betrayal cut deeper than any enemy blade Cole had faced. While he'd been hunting stolen technology across Europe, his own equipment was being sold from his basement by the woman he'd trusted with his life. The operational security breach was catastrophic, but the personal violation threatened to shatter his carefully controlled world. "There's more," General Morrison added grimly. "The buyer, Thomas Chun, is a former defense contractor with known connections to foreign intelligence services. Whether he intended to keep the equipment or transfer it to hostile actors remains under investigation." Cole studied the evidence with clinical detachment, his mind already shifting into tactical assessment mode. The sale had occurred 3 days ago. Amber was in federal custody, but Russell Hawkins remained free, likely unaware of the equipment's true significance. The investigation was ongoing, with Cole's own loyalty under scrutiny despite his exemplary service record. "What are my orders, sir?" Cole asked. "Officially, you're on administrative leave pending the investigation's completion," General Morrison replied. "Unofficially, you know this equipment better than anyone. Your cooperation could help us assess the damage and potentially recover additional stolen items." Agent Vega leaned forward. We need to search your home thoroughly, interview your neighbors, and reconstruct every detail of how this happened. Your wife is claiming ignorance, but the evidence suggests a more sophisticated operation. Cole's jaw tightened. Agent Vega, with respect, my wife isn't sophisticated enough to plan a federal crime. Someone guided her into this. Russell Hawkins? She asked. Russell Hawkins, Cole confirmed, his voice dropping to the deadly quiet tone his unit members had learned to fear. The drive to Cedar Falls took 4 hours, giving Cole time to process the magnitude of his situation. His marriage was over. That was non-negotiable. Betrayal, especially betrayal that endangered national security and his fellow soldiers, crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. But Russell Hawkins had manipulated Amber into committing treason, turning Cole's own home into a security breach that could cost lives. As the FBI convoy approached his neighborhood, Cole noticed details his neighbors wouldn't. The positions of surveillance teams, the subtle markers indicating ongoing investigation, and most importantly, Russell Hawkins' truck parked in his driveway, as if nothing had changed. He's still here, Cole observed. We've had him under surveillance since the incident, Agent Vega explained. He doesn't know the true significance of what was sold. We're hoping he'll lead us to additional stolen items or co-conspirators. Cole's smile was razor-sharp and completely without warmth. He won't be leading you anywhere much longer. Agent Vega caught the tone. Sergeant Major, this is an active federal investigation. Any interference won't be necessary. Cole interrupted smoothly. I'm sure Mr. Hawkins will be eager to cooperate with federal authorities once he understands the full scope of his situation. As they pulled into his driveway, Cole was already formulating a plan that would satisfy both justice and his own need for retribution. Russell Hawkins had destroyed his marriage and compromised national security. The federal government would handle the legal consequences, but Cole would ensure the personal ones were far more memorable. He stepped out of the federal vehicle and looked directly at Russell's house, knowing his neighbor was watching from behind curtains. Cole's expression was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying to anyone who understood what lay behind it. The hunt was about to begin. Chapter 4, The Assessment. Cole's first walk through his violated home was a masterclass in controlled fury. Every piece of missing equipment told a story of betrayal and amateur tradecraft that made him simultaneously enraged and disgusted. The basement workshop, his personal sanctuary, had been ransacked with the carelessness of someone who understood neither the equipment's value nor the consequences of its theft. Agent Vega documented each missing item while Cole provided detailed technical specifications from memory. The stolen prototype satellite communicator alone represented 2 years of classified development and could access military channels that hostile forces would kill to monitor. The night vision systems used proprietary technology that gave American forces decisive advantages in nighttime operations. The total value exceeds $2 million, Cole informed the agents. But the operational impact is immeasurable. This equipment in the wrong hands could compromise missions and cost lives. What disturbed Cole most wasn't the theft itself, but the surgical precision with which the most dangerous items had been selected. Someone had guided Amber's choices, identifying the most valuable and sensitive equipment while leaving behind items that appeared impressive but held limited practical applications. Your wife couldn't have made these selections randomly, Agent Vega observed. No, Cole agreed. Someone with technical knowledge guided her. Someone who understood military equipment but lacked the clearance to know its true capabilities. Russell Hawkins' background check revealed intriguing details. Former Navy communications specialist, discharged after 8 years with commendations, but no advancement beyond petty officer. Currently employed by Morrison Construction, a company that held contracts for base maintenance at several military installations. Russell had legitimate access to military facilities and enough technical knowledge to recognize valuable equipment. More importantly, Russell's financial records showed a pattern of contact with Thomas Chin dating back 6 months, long before the garage sale. Phone records, email exchanges, and bank transfers painted a picture of premeditated conspiracy rather than opportunistic theft. This wasn't a crime of passion, Cole concluded. Russell targeted my wife, manipulated her emotions, and used her to access my equipment. He knew exactly what he was looking for. Agent Vega nodded. We're building a case for conspiracy to commit espionage. But proving Russell's intent and knowledge will require more evidence. Cole's tactical mind was already working several steps ahead. You need him to demonstrate knowledge he shouldn't possess. You need him to incriminate himself through actions, not just associations. Any suggestions? Give me 48 hours to re-establish contact with my neighbors. Let me be the concerned husband returning home to a terrible situation. Russell will want to gauge my knowledge and potentially manipulate the narrative. He'll make mistakes. That evening, Cole stood in his backyard, knowing Russell was watching from his kitchen window. The performance began with Cole appearing broken and confused, standing among the scattered belongings federal agents had left during their search. He wanted Russell to see a man devastated by his wife's betrayal, not a special operations veteran planning retribution. His phone rang exactly as expected. "Cole, man, I'm so sorry about all this." Russell's voice carried carefully modulated concern. "I saw the FBI cars. Is Amber okay?" "She's in federal custody," Cole replied, letting exhaustion color his voice. "Russell, I don't understand what happened. The agents are saying she sold military equipment, but that's impossible. Maybe someone took advantage of her while you were deployed," Russell suggested. "You know how trusting she is. Someone could have convinced her those things were just surplus gear." Cole's grip tightened on the phone. Russell was already testing the waters, gauging how much Cole knew about his involvement while positioning himself as a concerned friend. The agents asked about neighbors who might have had access to the house. Cole continued. "I told them you'd been helping Amber with repairs, but I vouched for your character. I hope that was okay." The relief in Russell's voice was audible. "Of course, man. I just tried to help out where I could. You know how it is. Military families need to stick together." They arranged to meet the following evening, ostensibly for Cole to thank Russell for his help during the deployment. Russell agreed eagerly, probably calculating how to further manipulate Cole's apparent naivety. After ending the call, Cole walked to his basement workshop and activated a piece of equipment the thieves had overlooked, a military-grade audio surveillance system designed for intelligence gathering. If Russell Hawkins wanted to play games with a special operations veteran, Cole would ensure the playing field was thoroughly monitored. The next phase of his plan would require Russell to demonstrate technical knowledge he shouldn't possess, make contact with co-conspirators, or attempt to manipulate additional evidence. Cole was patient, methodical, and absolutely determined to ensure that justice served both legal and personal requirements. Russell Hawkins had declared war on Cole's family and national security. He was about to discover that Cole Brennan was exceptionally skilled at winning wars. Chapter 5. The Manipulation. Cole's invitation to dinner was perfectly crafted, the grieving husband seeking comfort from a trusted neighbor. Russell arrived with a bottle of wine and carefully practiced expressions of sympathy, unaware that Cole had spent the day transforming his home into a surveillance operation worthy of foreign intelligence gathering. The dining room conversation flowed naturally as Cole played his role to perfection. He spoke of feeling betrayed by Amber, confused by the federal charges, and grateful for Russell's friendship during this difficult time. Russell responded with exactly the performance Cole expected, supportive, outraged on Cole's behalf, and subtly curious about the investigation's progress. The agents mentioned some of the equipment was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, Cole said, watching Russell's micro-expressions. "I had no idea. To me, it was just work gear." Russell's pupils dilated slightly, a tell Cole recognized from interrogating enemy combatants. "That's crazy, man. Who would have thought military surplus could be worth so much?" "They're calling it classified technology," Cole continued. "Apparently, some of it was never supposed to leave the base. I'm having trouble understanding how I ended up with stolen equipment in my basement." "Maybe there was some paperwork mix-up," Russell suggested. "You know how the military is with bureaucracy." Cole nodded thoughtfully. "That's what I'm hoping. The agents said they need to trace the equipment's chain of custody. If someone made an administrative error, it could clear up this whole mess." Russell leaned forward, appearing interested but betraying genuine concern. "What kind of trace are they doing?" "Serial numbers, manufacturing dates, distribution records," Cole explained. "They're also analyzing the buyer, some guy named Thomas Chun who called the police. The agents think he might have been a prearranged contact rather than a random garage sale customer." The blood drained from Russell's face, confirming Cole's suspicions about the conspiracy's scope. Russell had clearly arranged the sale through Chun, but now faced the terrifying possibility that federal investigators would uncover their connection. That seems pretty sophisticated for a garage sale scam, Russell managed. Exactly what I thought, Cole agreed. The agents suspect this might be part of a larger operation. They're investigating whether other military families have been targeted. Cole watched Russell process this information, knowing his neighbor was calculating risks and potential escape routes. The hook was set. Now Cole needed Russell to take actions that would provide federal agents with actionable evidence. I feel terrible that I couldn't protect Amber from whoever manipulated her, Cole continued. She's not smart enough to plan something like this alone. Someone with technical knowledge had to guide her equipment selections. You think someone specifically targeted her? I'm certain of it, Cole replied with conviction. The question is whether they'll try to contact her again or if they've moved on to other targets. After Russell left, Cole reviewed the audio recordings with grim satisfaction. Russell had demonstrated knowledge about military equipment procurement that contradicted his claims of ignorance, shown excessive interest in the investigation's methods, and displayed physical stress responses consistent with guilt and fear. More importantly, Cole's implied threats about expanding investigations had clearly rattled Russell's confidence. Within hours, federal surveillance teams reported unusual activity. Russell making encrypted phone calls, visiting a storage unit across town, and conducting counter-surveillance checks while driving. Cole's next move was more direct. He called Russell at 2 a.m., his voice carrying the manufactured panic of a man pushed beyond his breaking point. Russell, I need help. The FBI just called. They want me to take a polygraph test tomorrow. They think I'm lying about my involvement. Jesus, Cole. Why would they suspect you? Because some of the missing equipment was signed out to me personally. They're saying I either stole it myself or I'm covering for whoever did. I don't know what to do. Russell's response revealed the depth of his manipulation. Maybe you should consider that Amber might know more than she's telling. Women can be pretty deceptive when they want to be. Cole's jaw clenched at the calculated cruelty of Russell's suggestion. The man who had seduced his wife was now suggesting she deserved suspicion. But the comment also provided exactly what Cole needed. Evidence that Russell was attempting to redirect blame onto Amber while positioning himself as Cole's ally. You really think she could have planned this? Cole asked. I'm just saying, people change when someone's deployed for months. Maybe she got involved with people you don't know about. The conversation continued for 30 minutes, with Russell gradually building a narrative that portrayed Amber as the mastermind and Cole as an innocent victim. Each suggestion was carefully documented by Cole's recording equipment and simultaneously captured by FBI surveillance. By morning, Cole had established Russell's guilt, mapped his co-conspirators through triggered phone calls, and provided federal agents with evidence of witness tampering and obstruction of justice. Now came the final phase, forcing Russell to make choices that would destroy any remaining legal defenses while satisfying Cole's need for personal retribution. The trap was set. Russell Hawkins was about to discover that manipulating a special operations veteran's family was a fatal mistake. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. Cole's call to Russell at dawn carried the desperation of a broken man. I need to see you. Now. The polygraph results came back, and they're arresting me this afternoon. Russell arrived within minutes, finding Cole pacing frantically in his living room, hands shaking as he held a cup of coffee. The performance was flawless. A decorated soldier crumbling under pressure he couldn't understand. They know everything, Russell. They know about the equipment, about Amber, about... Cole paused, staring at his neighbor with genuine fear. They know someone has been in my house. What do you mean? Security footage. The FBI found security cameras I didn't even know existed. Military intelligence installed them when I got my security clearance upgraded. They have recordings of everyone who entered my house during the deployment. Russell's composure finally cracked. Recordings of what? Everything, Cole replied. Conversations, movements, who went where. They showed me footage of Amber in the basement, but she wasn't alone. Someone was directing her, telling her which equipment to take. Cole watched Russell's face cycle through confusion, fear, and finally calculation. The mention of security footage was fictional, but Russell's guilty conscience made it entirely believable. More importantly, it forced Russell to reveal knowledge he shouldn't possess. Cole, you need to calm down. Maybe the footage isn't as clear as they're claiming. Video can be interpreted different ways. Russell, they have you on camera in my basement. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Russell's face went ashen as he realized the implications, but his response proved Cole's assessment of his character. Rather than confession and remorse, Russell chose deception and self-preservation. That's impossible. I was never in your basement. Then explain how they have footage of you selecting specific equipment and providing Amber with technical specifications. Russell's panic was now complete, and his next words confirmed his willingness to sacrifice Amber to protect himself. Cole, you have to understand. Amber came to me. She said you owed money to dangerous people, that she needed to sell things to protect the girls. I just tried to help her identify items that might be valuable. The lie was so comprehensive and calculated that Cole felt his carefully controlled fury threatening to break free. Russell had seduced his wife, stolen classified equipment, endangered national security, and was now attempting to frame Amber as the mastermind while positioning himself as another victim. So you admit to being in my basement and handling classified equipment? Russell realized too late that he'd been maneuvered into a confession. I didn't know it was classified. Amber said it was surplus gear you'd brought home. Russell, I've been recording our conversation for the last 10 minutes. The FBI is probably already en route. The truth hit Russell like a physical blow. His face cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally desperate calculation. Cole recognized the look. He'd seen it on enemy combatants when they realized their capture was inevitable and started weighing violent escape options. You son of a bitch, Russell snarled, his practice charm finally dropping completely. You think you're so much better than everyone else with your military hero bullshit. Your wife came to me because you're never here, because you care more about your precious career than your family. My family that you destroyed. I gave Amber what she needed, attention, affection, someone who actually gave a damn about her problems. You left her alone for months at a time and expected her to just wait around like some kind of military pet. Cole's voice dropped to the lethal whisper his unit members had learned to fear. Russell, you stole classified military equipment and sold it to foreign contacts. You committed treason. Whatever you think happened between you and my wife, you crossed lines that have nothing to do with marriage problems. Russell's desperation drove him to a final, fatal mistake. He lunged toward Cole, apparently believing he could physically intimidate a special operations veteran or create an altercation that might provide legal leverage. The fight lasted approximately 3 seconds. Cole's response was precise, efficient, and completely overwhelming. Russell found himself face down on the hardwood floor with his arm twisted behind his back in a submission hold that made resistance not just impossible, but agonizing. Federal agents will be here in 5 minutes. Cole informed him conversationally. Your confession is recorded, your co-conspirators are already in custody, and Thomas Chun has been providing information about your network for the last 24 hours. Russell's world collapsed as sirens became audible in the distance. You planned this whole thing. I planned nothing. Cole replied with cold precision. I simply gave you opportunities to reveal your true character. You chose confession, attempted witness manipulation, and physical assault entirely on your own. As Agent Vega and her team burst through the front door, Cole released Russell and stepped back, his expression returning to professional neutrality. The recording equipment had captured everything: Russell's admissions, his attempts to frame Amber, and his violent response when confronted with evidence. Agent Vega, Mr. Hawkins, just provided a full confession to his role in the equipment theft. He also admitted to manipulating my wife and expressed willingness to let her face espionage charges for his crimes. Russell was already in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage and desperation. This was entrapment. He set me up. Agent Vega smiled grimly. Mr. Hawkins, you confessed to federal crimes, admitted to witness tampering, and assaulted a federal witness. Sergeant Major Brennan simply provided you with opportunities to speak freely. As Russell was led away, Cole felt the first phase of his retribution complete. Legal justice would handle the federal crimes, but personal justice required a more comprehensive approach. Russell Hawkins had destroyed Cole's marriage and compromised national security, but he'd also revealed the calculating cruelty beneath his charming facade. The war was far from over. Chapter 7. The Deeper Truth. Cole's meeting with Amber in the Federal Detention Center was their first face-to-face conversation since his return. She sat across from him in an orange jumpsuit, her auburn hair unwashed and her eyes red from weeks of crying. The woman who had once been the center of his world now looked like a stranger wearing his wife's face. "Cole, thank God you're here," she began, reaching across the table before remembering the no-contact rules. "This is all a terrible mistake. I never meant for any of this to happen." Cole studied her with clinical detachment, noting the micro-expressions and verbal patterns he'd learned to analyze during interrogations. Amber was genuinely distressed, but her distress focused entirely on her own situation rather than the consequences of her actions. "Tell me about Russell," he said simply. "He's been arrested too. The agents are saying we planned this together, but that's not true. Russell was just helping me with household repairs while you were deployed. We became close friends, and when money got tight, he suggested selling some of your old military gear." "Close friends." Amber's composure cracked slightly. "Cole, I know how this looks, but you have to understand. You've been gone for 18 months. I was lonely, the girls were struggling with your absence, and Russell was just there. You had an affair. It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she said quickly. "It was just comfort during a difficult time. I never stopped loving you." Cole's expression remained neutral, but her words confirmed his assessment of her character. Amber viewed her adultery as a minor indiscretion compared to her current legal troubles, showing no genuine understanding of the betrayal involved. "What did Russell tell you about the equipment's value?" "He said military surplus could be worth good money to collectors. I never imagined it was classified or stolen." "Cole, you have to believe me. I thought it was just old gear you'd brought home legally." Cole leaned forward slightly. "Amber, I've seen the evidence. You selected specific items worth millions of dollars while leaving behind equipment that appeared more impressive but had limited value. That level of precision required technical guidance. Russell helped me identify what might be valuable, but he said he was just guessing based on his Navy experience. His Navy experience that ended 12 years ago with communications equipment that bears no resemblance to current technology." Amber's confusion appeared genuine, suggesting she'd been manipulated more thoroughly than Cole initially realized. Russell had used her emotional vulnerability and technical ignorance to transform her into an unwitting accomplice in federal crimes. "The federal prosecutor wants to charge you with espionage," Cole continued. "The equipment you sold could compromise ongoing military operations and endanger American lives. Do you understand the magnitude of what you've done?" "But I didn't know," she protested. "If someone misled me about the equipment's significance, how can I be held responsible for their deception?" Cole recognized the legal strategy her attorney had undoubtedly suggested: claim manipulation and ignorance to reduce criminal culpability. It might work for the federal charges, but it wouldn't repair the fundamental betrayal of their marriage. "Amber, regardless of what you knew about the equipment, you had an affair and gave another man access to our home. You violated the most basic trust of our marriage while I was serving overseas." "Cole, I made mistakes, but we can work through this. People have affairs during deployments all the time. Military counselors deal with this situation constantly. We can rebuild if you're willing to try." Her response revealed the depth of her self-deception. Amber genuinely believed their marriage could survive adultery and federal felony charges because military families faced similar challenges regularly. She showed no understanding that Cole's moral code made forgiveness impossible. "Amber, I want you to listen carefully," Cole said with quiet finality. "I will ensure you receive competent legal representation for the federal charges. I will make certain our daughters are protected and supported. But our marriage is over. There will be no reconciliation, no second chances, and no forgiveness." "You can't mean that. We have 15 years together, 2 children." "We had 15 years, Cole corrected. "You chose to end that when you brought Russell Hawkins into our bed and our home. The consequences of that choice are permanent." Amber's desperation finally showed her true priorities. "What about the girls? They need their father. You can't abandon them because of my mistakes." "I would never abandon Hannah and Grace. But they also need to understand that actions have consequences and that betrayal carries a permanent price. The lesson you're teaching them matters more than temporary comfort." Cole stood to leave, his decision crystallized by their conversation. Amber had shown no genuine remorse for her betrayal, no understanding of the security breach she'd created, and no acceptance of responsibility beyond legal necessity. She viewed their marriage as a convenience that should survive her infidelity because military families face such challenges regularly. "Cole, please," she called as he reached the door. "I love you." We can fix this. He turned back once. Amber, if you had loved me, none of this would have happened. Russell Hawkins destroyed our marriage, but you gave him the tools to do it. As Cole left the detention center, he felt a cold satisfaction settling over him. The woman he'd married no longer existed, if she ever had. The person sitting in federal custody was a stranger who wore Amber's face, but lacked her moral foundation. Phase 2 of his retribution was about to begin, and it would ensure that both Russell and Amber understood the full consequences of their choices. Chapter 8. The Final Judgment. Cole's return to Cedar Falls marked the beginning of his most carefully orchestrated operation. The federal charges against Russell and Amber were proceeding smoothly. Russell facing 25 years for espionage and conspiracy, Amber likely to receive 5 years with her cooperation agreement. But legal justice only addressed the criminal aspects of their betrayal. Personal justice required a more comprehensive approach. Cole's first target was Russell's construction company, Morrison Construction, which held lucrative contracts with several military installations. An anonymous tip to the Defense Security Service revealed that Russell had been using his access to photograph and document military facilities beyond his authorized scope. Security footage Cole discovered showed Russell taking pictures of classified areas during routine maintenance visits. The company lost all federal contracts within a week, declaring bankruptcy immediately afterward. 63 employees lost their jobs, and Russell's reputation in the construction industry was permanently destroyed. When Russell was eventually released from federal prison, he would find himself unemployable in his chosen profession. But Cole's retribution extended beyond professional destruction. The storage unit Russell had visited during surveillance contained additional stolen equipment, night vision devices, and communication gear Russell had been stockpiling for future sales. Cole's anonymous tip led federal agents to discover the cache, adding additional felony charges that would extend Russell's sentence by another decade. More personally, Cole's investigation revealed that Russell had been documenting his affair with Amber through hidden cameras in his own home. The recordings, which Russell had probably intended for blackmail or personal gratification, became evidence of his predatory behavior and manipulation tactics. Cole ensured these recordings reached Russell's ex-wife, who used them to gain full custody of their shared children and secure a restraining order that would prevent Russell from contacting his family upon release. Russell's own children would grow up knowing their father was a convicted traitor and adulterer. Amber's punishment was more subtle but equally comprehensive. Her teaching position was terminated immediately upon her arrest, with the school district citing moral turpitude clauses in her contract. The Teaching Certification Board revoked her license permanently, making her unemployable in education anywhere in the country. Her professional career, which had defined her identity for 12 years, was over. The divorce proceedings were swift and merciless. Cole's military legal counsel had prepared documentation that protected his assets, secured full custody of Hannah and Grace, and ensured Amber would receive no alimony or property settlement. Her legal fees for the federal case consumed her remaining resources, leaving her financially destitute. Most devastatingly, Cole's careful presentation of evidence to their 15-year-old daughters ensured they understood exactly why their parents' marriage had ended. Hannah and Grace learned that their mother had committed adultery while their father served overseas, then stolen classified equipment to fund an escape with her lover. The girls' reaction was swift and absolute. They requested to live permanently with their father and refused further contact with Amber beyond court-mandated visitation. Their mother had become a source of shame and embarrassment rather than comfort. Cole's final move addressed the community impact of their betrayal. Cedar Falls was a military community where family honor and loyalty carried substantial social weight. Cole's measured disclosure of facts, Amber's adultery, the equipment theft, and Russell's manipulation, destroyed both their reputations permanently. Neighbors who had trusted Russell with house keys and emergency contacts now understood they'd welcomed a traitor into their community. Amber's former friends and teaching colleagues learned she'd risked national security for personal gratification. The community that had supported her during Cole's deployments now viewed her as a security threat and moral failure. When Russell and Amber were eventually released from federal prison, they would return to a community that knew exactly who they were and what they'd done. There would be no fresh starts, no opportunities for redemption, and no escape from the consequences of their choices. Cole's methodology had been precise and overwhelming. Legal justice, professional destruction, family isolation, financial ruin, and social ostracism. Every aspect of their lives had been systematically dismantled as consequences for their betrayal. But the most important element of Cole's retribution was its permanence. Russell and Amber would serve their prison sentences, but their real punishment would continue for the rest of their lives. They had chosen to betray honor, loyalty, and national security for immediate gratification. Cole had ensured they would remember that choice every day for decades to come. Standing in his rebuilt basement workshop, surrounded by new equipment and enhanced security measures, Cole felt the satisfaction of a mission completed successfully. His daughters were safe, his security was restored, and justice had been served comprehensively. Russell Hawkins and Amber Brennan had learned that betraying a special operations veteran carried consequences that extended far beyond legal punishment. They had faced Cole Brennan's version of justice, and they would never recover from it. Chapter 9. The New Foundation. 6 months after the arrests, Cole stood in the courthouse hallway as the final legal proceedings concluded. Russell Hawkins had been sentenced to 35 years in federal prison after additional charges were filed for the hidden equipment cache and security violations at military installations. Amber received 8 years with the possibility of parole in 5, her cooperation having provided some mitigation. Neither sentence brought Cole satisfaction. The legal system had simply confirmed what he'd already established through his own methods. The real consequences of their betrayal would extend far beyond prison walls. Hannah and Grace waited in the hallway, now 16 and mature beyond their years. The past months had strengthened their relationship with their father while crystallizing their understanding of moral principles that couldn't be compromised. They'd learned that loyalty, honor, and integrity weren't abstract concepts, but practical foundations that determine life's most important outcomes. "Dad, is it really over?" Hannah asked. "The legal proceedings are finished," Cole replied. "But the consequences of people's choices continue indefinitely. Your mother and Russell will carry the results of their decisions for the rest of their lives." Grace, always the more analytical of his daughters, nodded thoughtfully. "You made sure of that, didn't you?" Cole met her gaze directly. "I ensured that justice was complete and permanent. People who betray trust, especially trust that affects national security and family safety, need to understand that such actions carry lasting consequences." The girls had adapted to their new reality with resilience that made Cole proud. They maintained minimal contact with Amber during supervised visitation, treating her with polite distance rather than the affection they'd once shared. Their mother had become a cautionary example rather than a source of comfort. Cole's career had not only survived the security breach, but been enhanced by his professional handling of the investigation. His cooperation with federal authorities and methodical approach to uncovering the conspiracy had earned commendations from both military and civilian leadership. A promotion to command sergeant major was pending, along with assignment to a prestigious counterintelligence position. The house in Cedar Falls had been transformed into a fortress of privacy and security. New neighbors moved into Russell's former home, a military family who understood operational security and community loyalty. The basement workshop featured enhanced protection and monitoring systems that would prevent any future unauthorized access. But Cole's most important accomplishment was the lesson he'd taught his daughters about consequence and character. "Some people think forgiveness is always the noble choice," he explained as they drove home. "But forgiveness without accountability enables future betrayal. Your mother and Russell needed to understand that their actions had permanent consequences, not just temporary inconvenience." "Will you ever forgive her?" Grace asked. "Forgiveness implies the possibility of restored relationship," Cole replied. "Your mother chose to end our relationship when she betrayed our marriage and national security. You can't forgive someone back into a relationship they chose to destroy." Hannah nodded slowly. "So consequence and accountability are more important than forgiveness?" "They're the foundation that makes forgiveness meaningful," Cole corrected. "If someone faces real consequences for their actions and demonstrates genuine change over time, forgiveness becomes possible. But if someone expects forgiveness without accountability, they're really asking for permission to repeat their betrayal." The conversation continued as they reached home, with Cole explaining the principles that would guide their family going forward. Loyalty earned loyalty. Trust required verification. Honor was non-negotiable, and betrayal carried permanent consequences. That evening, Cole received a call from Agent Vega with updates on the broader investigation. Thomas Chun and his network of technology smugglers had been dismantled completely, with dozens of arrests across 3 countries. The stolen equipment had been recovered or accounted for, preventing its use against American forces. Your cooperation made the difference in this operation, Agent Vega told him. The intelligence you provided and the way you handled Russell's interrogation gave us everything we needed. Russell and my wife made their own choices, Cole replied. I simply ensured those choices had appropriate consequences. As he ended the call, Cole looked around his rebuilt home and felt genuine satisfaction. His daughters were safe, his career was advancing, and his community was more secure. The betrayers had been punished comprehensively and permanently. More importantly, he demonstrated that some principles couldn't be compromised regardless of personal cost. Hannah and Grace had learned that honor, loyalty, and integrity were worth protecting even when the protection required ruthless action. Russell Hawkins and Amber Brennan had chosen to destroy Cole's family for immediate gratification. In response, Cole had systematically dismantled every aspect of their lives while rebuilding his own on stronger foundations. The lesson was complete, the justice was permanent, and the foundation was unshakable. Cole Brennan had won the war they declared on his family, and his victory would serve as a warning to anyone who might consider similar betrayal in the future. Some men could be manipulated, deceived, or broken. Cole Brennan was not one of them.